of our certainly our good friend Bob Chapman. Hi, Bob. How are you doing?
Well, pretty good. I'm glad that you had a little respite from the rain.
Well, the rain's coming back. We're glad to see it. We need the rain here on the West Coast, and we're just so fortunate we don't get the snow or the terrible storms they're getting elsewhere. But anyway, certainly this was an exciting day on the stock market. It looks like the market's going just the way you've been predicting.
Unfortunately, yes. And I'm looking for a correction down into the Dow 6,000 to 6,600 area. It closed at 67.63, and that's the figure I gave out last week and the week before. And I think then we'll get a bouncing rally back up into the low sevens, and then from there it should go down to somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 before the year is out. And then the next year, I think it's going a bit lower if we're lucky.
Well, now I noticed they really hit gold again today, though. I mean, that was down. Silver wasn't so bad, but certainly gold they took down, what, another $10?
Well, the spot market was down. Let me get my sheet out here. Spot market was down $3.70 to $938.80, but the outside market, which is the April contract, that was down considerably more. It was down $12.40, and gold was up strongly prior to the New York opening. So it's another example of rigging the markets by the United States government. Not only with the price of gold, they pounded on the shares as well. And at the same time, they tried to keep the market from going lower, but they were very unsuccessful. And I think it's really out of their hands now. And I think gold will follow, and it's not unhealthy to have what looks to be about a 10% correction. It'll turn around and go right back up again. So that's why you invest in gold and silver on a long-term basis. You don't try to trade these markets.
Okay, fine. Well, tell me what's happening to the Swiss currency. I've got some friends over in Switzerland who say that they're having some real problems over there with the Swiss currency because so many Swiss francs have been lent in Eastern Europe, and they're not going to be able to pay them back, and that's going to have sort of a disastrous effect. What's your take on that?
Well, if the Swiss lenders don't write some of it off, and the European Union does not help the Eastern European nations, which are Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Romania, and Hungary, Ukraine. Now, they all have gotten some help, but it's not nearly enough. And the EU is going to have to do that. Now, if they don't, the EU is going to break up. And if they don't help Spain, Ireland, and Portugal, the Eurozone will break up. And, of course, I haven't even included the death patient, which is in worse shape, which is England. Of course, they belong to the EU, but on the other hand, they're not in the Eurozone. Eurozone has 16 participants. Y'all get it out. Participants, and we have about 27 in the EU.
Hold that thought. We're going to hold that thought, Bob. We're going to be back here in just a moment as we bring some of our other stations on board right here at Radio Liberty. Dr. Stan and our guest is Bob Chapman, and he's commenting that the market went down 300 points today. Of course, all the experts are saying, oh, there's going to be a bounce. Now we've had all these wonderful pieces of legislation. We had the bailout legislation. Now we've got the budget. And ladies and gentlemen, they're talking about a deficit that they will admit to for about $1.75 trillion. Remember that the biggest spender we'd ever had was Ronald Reagan. This was back in during the 1980s. And over an 8-year period, he actually increased the federal debt $1.7 trillion. They're going to have a $1.75 trillion deficit in the year 2009. If we're lucky, it'll probably be much higher than that. So you go ahead and pick up the story there, Bob.
Well, the the deficits are fiscally, as well as the money that's coming out of the Treasury and the Fed, is so colossal. It's beyond imagination. And there is no light at the end of the tunnel in regard to this continual creation of money and credit. And these people who are in charge, Larry Summers and Paulson before him, they're all members of the Illuminati, and they know, and they have read the same history that Stan and I have, and they know that this won't work. And so they're buying time until they can coordinate what they want to do in regard to the program that they've got set in place for the domination of the world in the incidence of world government. And I think what they're waiting for here and gaining time for is they want to get this conflict, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza. They want to get them all in flames at the same time. And then, of course, they'll draft and take people over there, and people will be more concerned about whether they're going to survive it or whether they have a job or not. And so I think that's the course things are going to take. And I picked up a tape today of a speaking engagement by two gentlemen from the Council on Foreign Relations, financial experts for them. And they said that they believe that there will be an attempted military coup in 2012, which I thought was quite interesting, that they would come out and even discuss this and get themselves taped on it. And so obviously they're very concerned, and I'm sure that any such military coup were to occur.
But of course, that's assuming the military coup would try to restore our Constitution. Actually, we know there was an attempted military coup during the Roosevelt administration. Smedley Butler wrote about that, and certainly there was another one during the Nixon administration before he was impeached. And of course, all of those were to actually impose an authoritarian dictatorship, not to restore our Constitution. So if the CFR is talking about it, you can be sure they're not interested in preserving our Constitution, because they hate our Constitution, they hate freedom, they believe in rule by the elite, and they're the elite.
It'll either go one or two ways. They're either creating such a coup, which they can control, as you just said, which would come out of the Pentagon, or they might be expecting a coup from persons unknown who they can't control. So only time would tell. But for them to come out and discuss it is a big change. And it's an important event. And I'm glad I picked up on the tape, and it'll be in the next issue.
All right, we're certainly going to look forward to that. And I saw a fascinating interview today, actually, with Ron Paul interviewing Paul Volcker and asking him, what is really planned? What are you planning on doing? What are they doing at these meetings? And it was really, for our listeners out there, Paul Volcker is one of the major architects of everything going on, former chairman of the Fed, the chairman of the North American group of the Trilateral Commission, permanent chairman, as a matter of fact, advisor to the president. I mean, he's on every bad organization, Bilderberger's Council on Foreign Relations. And Ron Paul asked him, what are you going to do? What's going to happen? Where are we going with this system, which obviously is not going to work, and everything you're doing is only making it worse? Volcker's response was, well, I can assure you that there are no meetings going on and no plans being made. And I'm sitting there thinking, Paul Volcker, one of the most powerful and influential men in the world, tells us that there are no plans. Of course there's a plan. The plan is to bring a world government to plunge us into chaos, and he knows what the plan is. And Henry Kissinger laid it out in that January 12th article in the International Herald. But the last thing they want is for the American people to know that these people want to take away freedom. They believe in an elitist form of government. There's not that very many of them. There's only 5,000 in the CFR, the Bilderbergers, and the Trilateral Commission. The Trilateral Commission is pretty close to the top of this pyramid of power, of wealth, of people whose loyalty is not to the United States, but to this globalist dream. And behind that, of course, I believe are the powerful spiritual forces that are energizing this movement for a one-world government. But you go ahead, Bob.
Well, in 1967, I boiled the whole thing down to, very simply, it's a fight between our Lord and Satan, and they're on Satan's side. And it doesn't get any simpler, more explicit than that. That's just the way it is. And this is what we're fighting. And we will continue to do what we can do as long as we can to thwart these forces of evil.